It is not a coincidence that when you look around, Chromie Squiggles are in some of the largest museums and most esteemed museums around the world. This week, I am joined with the two guys behind a lot of those acquisitions, the founders of Squiggle DAO. Now, Squiggle DAO has a pure goal, that is to get squiggles into the hands of these museums, but also to make the Chromie Squiggle collection known by as many people as possible. We talk a ton about the museums that they've gotten these pieces into, some of the upcoming announcements that they do have coming out, and how, as a DAO, they operate to make that all happen. It's a great conversation, and obviously that conversation last week with Snowfro, that creator, does kind of spawn a lot of this talk into, okay, well, you have the artist and he has a great collection. Who is helping him? And this is who is helping him along with the collector base. Huge thanks to everybody who's tuning into this episode. Thanks for, again, caring about what I'm talking about and these great guests for coming on. And a shout out to the sponsor for this episode, which is loot.gg. Make sure you go and sign up for the trading terminal before it goes into pre-beta and get your early rewards. Without any further ado, here is Squiggle DAO. We are back this week with a great conversation, another Squiggle conversation. This time on the other side, we talked with the artist, Snowfro, last week. This week joined with Squiggle DAO, who I would consider you guys being the biggest player in the space when it comes to squiggles, because of how many you guys have collected, how you've helped get squiggles into some of the most prominent institutions in the art world, as well as being buyer, as well as promoting loans of squiggles, which we'll get into. But I think it's best to kind of start with who you guys are and what Squiggle DAO is.
So we normally say that we are elevating the squiggle to its rightful place, but what we do is to collect and promote. We are building the biggest and best collection of squiggles. We are not just trying to build a big number of in terms of number of squiggles, also an interesting collection that we can then display on events, exhibitions, etc. And then in the promote is where all the museums, community events, exhibitions come into play. And we try to do this not only for squiggles, but also for the general on-chain art space.
It's interesting because you guys have, at this point, as you say, collection built up a massive collection of squiggle. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but it's in the hundreds.
So a little bit how we started. I think it's interesting to cover how the DAO started. It was early 2021. Squiggles were 0.3 ETH, and some people decided to start a DAO around the squiggles, and we started organically because people were donating squiggles in exchange for the governance token to manage that collection. Those donation rounds, there were two, led to 231 squiggles being donated to the DAO. So we said, there is something serious here. We need to raise money. So towards the end of that year, we raised $8 million from top venture capital firms in the space, like Standard Crypto, True Ventures, the DAO. And then we started really ramping up operations. Now we have around 330 squiggles. I say around because the permanent collection has 330. We have some on other wallets that we are deciding. We just sold one ghost to a museum that we are going to announce soon, but there are a little bit extra that we might incorporate to the permanent collection, sell. It will depend. And since around mid 2023, Sam and I took over the DAO and we restructured the management and the team. We went from 11 full-time employees to us two and some contractors, and reviewed every line of expense, cutting completely or negotiating down every line of expense, etc.
Amazing. And Sam, and I guess you two were collectors in this space previous to the DAO. Obviously, Chromie Squiggles was a collection that resonated with you. But what your backgrounds? I'm curious. What led to you guys being here today?
Yeah. I definitely was a collector. I was big in the punks community, squiggles, all of gen art. But previous to this job, I was an engineer. But in general. And then I moved into the space, started trading myself, and really got obsessed with the DAO concept. I was one of the co-founders of Metaverse DAO, which eventually became Neon DAO. I was on the curation board of Fingerprints when it started, curating its original collection. I was one of the founding members of Bright Moment. So I was like always very, very passionate on DAOs, and finally found Squiggle DAO, joined, and then when me and NFT took over, it was really enjoyable because we're able to just implement all these theories we had on DAOs, and a lot of them play out to be good. And yeah, we're just very excited and very passionate about it, to be honest.
What is, I guess there's so many different KPIs for like the ultimate goal of the DAO, and talking to Eric last week about what he wants. It's not about his name. It's not about money. It's not about floor price, although we'll talk about that at some point. But it's like the proliferation of like the collection being known and it being a cultural icon is the ultimate goal in your eyes for this to be in as many museums as possible. Because it does seem like Squiggle DAO has kind of taken the position that you guys are ultimately leading this charge to get this in these museums, and using the collective of connections and what you've built to basically be the leader of these onboardings.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So one of the things that Nifty and I spotted early is like, what is the purpose of a DAO, right? Cool merch, it's cool, but it doesn't cut it, right? An event, it's awesome, but what does that really have like the long-term impact? So him and I really like spend a lot of time going back and forth. What are the best ways? He'll talk about the finance section in a bit, but on my side, it was just like, okay, so how can the DAO actually impact the collection? And how can we see this tangibly, right? Like, as we said, having an event, does that really onboard that many new people, etc. So as we progressed, when we took over, obviously we did the foundational stuff, like the legal, have a website, put out a lot of like data tooling, etc. And that was like you need that foundation, right? And then we started focusing on like the big picture, what really moves the needles. So museums was a big one, because obviously that's when the biggest issue with, I think, is Web3 is we are a bubble and we're not expanding. So right. It's just a circle, right? And our thing was like, we need traditional arts, like museums, trad art collectors, institution galleries, etc. So that's where we started taking this initiative, and we really, really put a lot of focus. It's been really hard actually, because right now this year we've seen a lot of news on museums, but we've actually been working on this for a year and a half. So it's like a year of nothing. And we're like, maybe we're doing this wrong. And it wasn't that. Just the main case is trad art works really slow, like really, really slow. So you're talking about like a multi-year project in a sense, but it's paid off. And now we've finally been seeing this. We were the first out to donate us like a piece of art to a museum. And now we're proud to say we're the first one that sold a piece to a museum. And that was quite a big sale, and we could definitely get more into that. But yeah, that's on the museum and operational side, and like also running lean. And then I'm sure Nifty can talk about the financial side.
Goes hand in hand. Talking to a museum that moves slow and thinking decades, we cannot be like a little organization that has 2-year runway. That's why we are focusing so much on cutting expenses, generating revenue, and trying to be sustainable or as much as we can toward that goal, so we can talk to them in the same sense, like we are going to be here supporting Squiggles for the foreseeable future. It's not that we are going to disappear in 2 years. So that helps tremendously. It's a virtuous cycle that reinforces itself. Then events that Sam was mentioning, we've been talking a lot lately about events that, like the marketing in big companies, to keep the current level of sales and to grow the level of sales. So we want to keep doing events for our community, of course, but part of that effort is going to go towards maybe going to a trad art event that we're already doing, but also car collector events that I know that you are interested in the space, watch collector, like let's onboard other big collectors to the space and not only circle around ourselves. So that's how we're thinking.
Well, I have a ton of questions out of what you both just said. I think the first one would be, the difference between talking to these museums and saying, "Hey, we want to give you a piece," or donate a piece. That is a way different conversation than going to a museum and saying, "We want you to acquire one and buy it. And you're going to pay market price for it." Um, I would assume that most of these museums are, again, slow to move. There's high risk in them. They've never owned digital art, maybe, and it's a high risk for them to make this move. And they have a reputation and they have signal in the traditional art world. And when they make a move like that, they could be wrong and it could look bad and it could tarnish our reputation. I think that's a fear that they would have. So the process between the donation versus a sale, I am curious how you finally it seems to have gotten a museum to buy one instead of receiving it.
Yeah. No, definitely it is really hard. Like, obviously our goal is for museums to acquire them, not to get them as a gift, right? And many people argue that, but the main thing to understand here is they don't even want them to begin with. So we need to be the bridge between Web3 and trad art to want them to learn about them, get interested in why are they so special? What's so special about the Squiggle? Their cultural impact, technological impact, etc. Educate them on, and then onboard them. So I think it's a slow process. We got to start where we can, which is placing them in museums, which already signals to other museums that there's interest, and then eventually that trickles down to like, maybe we should acquire one. So I think that was like, it basically proved, it was like product market fit for the DAO. It was like we finally figured it out, and there's going to be more placements in the future. Some will be donations, some will be sales. It just depends on the situation. Obviously, we want to optimize to eventually be only sales, but I think we're too early, and I think museums are just not educated enough on the art. So there has to be one that takes initiative to do that, and that's basically where we position ourselves.
What is the difference in like display / like excitement for having the piece when like it's donated to them versus like, obviously if you're gonna spend the money to buy the piece, you're like, I want it, I want to show it off, I'm bought into the narrative here and the movement that this art piece represents, versus, hey, we're giving it to you. If people want to donate art to me, sure, send it to my wallet, I'm not gonna complain, right? Like, I are the museums in a position of like, oh, like, yes, we'll receive it and we're all about this and we want to we want to show it off, and or are they just like, yeah, sure, we'll take it?
No, that's a great question. So like the other part, I guess, on the first part I was talking about was the issue is, okay, cool, now they're interested, but then you have to explain them about wallets and storage and seed phrases and security. So it adds a level of complication that they wouldn't otherwise have, especially if it's the first time they're being exposed. So we're also looking at it as we're being the DAOs, the pioneers for this, but this opens the door for all of the other artists and all of Gen Art. Because this isn't, when people are like, oh, like, why this, why that, why collection? We look at it as like, we're moving as a space. We're way too small of a space to be cannibalizing each other and having little tribes against each other. Like, we should work as one unit, and that's how we look at it. So we're hoping that this opens up the doors for multiple other collections to go. But for displays, so I would say 2 levels. Level 1's getting it to either let the acquisition or the placement. Second level is display. That is much, much harder because they've already been like hit by a train on something new, and now you have to like tell them about the display, which adds another complication because they don't have digital displays. And then you want to, like, we've seen most places that they've displayed the Squiggle is not ideal, and we've obviously talked to Snowfro about the best way to, and it's like a Samsung frame with a certain percentage of brightness, so it looks like the best and the colors come out the most naturally. So that's part 2, which we're also working, and we always try to incentivize museums. Nifty and I developed a strategy where like we offer museums a free Samsung frame if they're willing to display it. So we basically take it like the friction out of the conversation. We're like, we'll donate everything as it should be, and we can tell you exactly how to set it up if you're willing to display it. But again, a museum's not going to revamp structurally, architecturally part of the rooms for display. So that's like,
that's a big ask.
Yeah,
a big ask to come up. Like, there's a lot of big asks happening to these museums.
Yeah, we're getting there, but I think step by step.
And exactly the way that was going to say, that the way we see it is, let's open the doors first, and then we can get more picky about acquisitions, but versus donations or the right display, or if you don't display, maybe we don't donate to you. So let's open the doors first. It's still early stages. So
the next question I had, I'm just thinking back to what you were talking about, which was the business side of this. So you have the get this into a museum's hands, get the idea of the collection out there, onboard people. There is inherent value that you're creating doing that. The other side of that is you guys are a business at the end of the day, as you mentioned. There's a burn, and to have that burn, you actually have to have capital. And if you don't have profit coming in, then not good. Or if you don't have revenue, at least. It's interesting though. You're not dropping mints, and so the revenue that I assume you guys are able to make is through the sale of pieces from the collection. Is that correct, or am I missing another area within like the business model of like Squiggle DAO?
So regarding mints, we've experimented with different models. We did a mint with DCA, Snowfrost Brother, like to commemorate. It was the 3rd anniversary of the Arblox Day Zero projects.
Mm-hmm.
So Daniel working with Eric together with Squiggle DAO. And we saw that really the interest of the community is not us minting anything else or selling hoodies to them. We think that crypto allows us to generate revenue in other ways. So the way we did it at the beginning was in lending. We were super active, and maybe we can cover later in detail. Then, due to the regulatory environment, like the SEC targeting Web3 teams, our lawyers advising us to stop, we decided to stop lending. We replaced that revenue that was around 130K. Next year, we replaced that with some airdrops, some sponsorships, some yield that we were, as I mentioned, we were experimenting, generating some. So we generated another 100K, which was, we were pretty satisfied having to replace 100% of the revenue sources from one year to the next. And we were more or less at the same level.
Right.
And this year, there was the first that sales of Squiggles came into play with that museum that Sam hasn't mentioned, but it was a 6-figure sale at the time.
Wow.
So it was not a small one. And we were fighting with the museum because they wanted a really special piece in our collection, one that we exhibited last Marfa at Glitch. So we were like, we don't want to sell this one. But yeah, they were interested in that one particularly. And when we announced, all the details will make sense, why that piece. But that's when we are already at another 100K generated this year in just one quarter. So we are trying, but what we see summarizing TLDR is the community. We don't want to monetize the community. That's not our product market fit. Our product market fit is do the museums and generate via yield, via NFT lending, generate that revenue that sustains operations forever, ideally.
Incredible. It must be a pipe or a hyper. It's got to be something really special. I'm curious which one it is.
You wanna leak something or?
Yeah, let's go. Yes, of course.
On chain, so it's on chain. So
it is on chain. I can't say much. Well, I won't say anything about the museum. I'll say the squiggle was a ghost squiggle, and it was a very special piece. It's going to explain a lot of our, as we said, like the things we do don't make sense a year ago, but now they make total sense. Such as like starting the museums, didn't see anything for a year, and now they hit. It was the same thing. I don't know if you saw, we did the 800-pound marble squiggle sculpture at Glitch that we donated, and everyone's like, "What's the point of this? It's cool, but there." And we understood that you have to show art in different mediums for chart art to understand that there's more to it than just a screen, and that's super important. Obviously, we understand this, and we've been talking to a ton of people. We have a ton of contractors, a ton of you could call them consultants, people advising us on like the actual traveler world, and that was very clear. And then because of that, that also helps as inspiration for other museums to pick specific squiggles to fit something they're working on, which I know that sounds so vague, but it'll make sense. But yeah, this ghost squiggle, I mean, we signed, it was an agreement. The agreement happened when it was worth 6 figures. Sadly, when it was executed on chain, ETH dipped, so then it didn't hit the 6 figures. It's not really about like it's about it sends a message, right? That a museum specifically wants one that's not a floor, and it says a lot why that specific one. Again, I can't really say much more, but yeah, it was a very special piece. We struggled, but again, it goes into an amazing home, so we can't say
And
no.
for those who don't know, Ghost, there are rip squiggles, those that have that rip around them that has colors, and there are 11 preset background colors on squiggles. So those gray scale colors for rip match those background colors. The perfect white is color 255, of course matches the white background. That's a white harmonic. And ghosts are those that are as close to perfect white. Three color hues are not, you cannot notice with the naked eye. So between 252 and 255 are ghosts, those that blend with the background, with the white background.
I actually did not know that. I just learned something incredible.
They look pretty cool.
Well, that's exciting. I'm really excited to see the museum is going to be. We can get into the museums in a second, but we were just on a topic that is close to home for myself. I'm an investor in Gandhi, and I think the loan market for NFTs is incredibly important to talk about, especially at the high end. We see loans against Squiggles as one of the most active collections for loans, and they're joined alongside Punks, Fidenzas, Autoglyphs, and then you have some of the PFP collections as well that are out there. But high end art that's desirable, has found a market there, and it's interesting because it is the first time you're seeing an accessible store value in art. Where it's clicks away of, hey, I wanna get 50% of value out of this. I need it now. I can pay it back. I'm willing to pay interest and principal. Let's do it. You guys aren't loaning anymore, but at one point you guys were acquiring defaulting loans. I am curious to get your take on, will you return to the lending market? And then your take on the importance of, the loan market for a collection like Squiggles.
So for us, it was like the perfect match for the DAO. As our mission is to collect more squiggles, we were saying if we get a repayment, we are generating some yield on otherwise idle ETH. So it's perfect. We generate revenue. If we get a default and the loan was done correctly, we get an underpriced squiggle, which helps our mission. The community benefits because they have liquidity available at reasonable rates, and the art benefits because the more liquid, the more valuable. So perfect. What we did was in around a year, we originated more than almost 300 loans, more than 2,000 ETH. We were doing manual and automated strategies, so both. We're running bots on all the lending platforms, putting manual offers as well, tailored to the rarity, quality of the squiggle, and we were generating around 20% internal rate of return, including defaults. People think that we were blindly going for like whatever LTV and whatever floor level, we will blindly do 90% LTV and hit the defaults. That was not the case. At some levels, we were really aggressive lending when we were thinking that the squiggles were attractive in floor price. When squiggles ran to 15, that happened a couple of times during our time lending, we were almost out of the market. Also, between lenders, there were times that lenders had a lot of liquidity and competition was going to the extreme.
Right.
And we were just pulling offers saying, okay, we are not going to win loans for a couple months or for a couple of weeks,
right,
but makes no sense to compete at those levels of LTV, those levels of notional lending, the lending amount to not be technical, and the interest rate that we are charging makes no sense. We were trying to make good loans so the DAO as well is fair for the borrower, but the DAO as well benefits.
Makes sense. Again, at the end of the day, you guys need to make sure that, although you want to collect, you don't want to get in a position where you have, 100 loans that are defaulting on you, and you're stuck with a bunch of NFTs, and now you have, payments to take care of. You guys,
and to add two things, two cool things happen. One, some squiggle whales saw us, loved the initiative, and they also joined with similar terms to us, so that helped. And then what I was going to say is that you mentioned if we are going to come back, Now the regulatory situation is much better, so we are in conversations. That's all we can say.
Very interesting. And I'm curious again, as a Gandhi investor, were you guys using multiple platforms or a specific
Everything.
one? Or yeah, okay.
We were agnostic in the sense wherever is the borrower, we will
Makes
go
sense.
and put the best offer depending on the Squiggle. And also some community members were directly coming to the Discord and asking for a loan offer.
Very interesting. Well, it's exciting to see you guys come back to that. And obviously the regulatory side of things is helpful. I think a lot of people are still like they want more, but it is definitely different than it was 12 months ago for sure. Um, I think we could hop back to the museum conversation we were just having though, because there is a link between the loans and the museums, which is again this idea of there being value and people viewing it as an asset that they don't want to sell, right? There's a huge distinction, I think, in the maybe in the art collecting world, but specifically like NFTs, where I can own an asset and I view it as something I can own. It goes up in value, and then I want to sell it. And there is a point when you're about to click list or accept offer where you're like, all right, do I want to let this go? And for me personally, I know for many Chromie Skill owners, it would take a lot. It would take an insane number, or it's just off the table to sell that item. But there's still value there. Even if I say, like I'll never sell my Chromie Squiggle that I bought. If I did want to get the value out of it, though, I need to go get that loan. And then that is kind of driven also as like more and more prestigious institutions, as bigger collectors, as people start displaying this in their homes. That again has an impact on the lack of desire to sell, but you still have the value there. The museums that you guys have acquired are, and I could list some of these off. You have the LACMA, you have the Institute of Contemporary Art Miami, you have the NXT in Amsterdam, you have the ZKM in Germany, Buffalo AKG. These are not small name institutions. These are well known. These are Miami. It is the museum to go to in Miami, and obviously during Art Basel is kind of destination to some of the biggest art collectors and art connoisseurs in the world. With this, I'm curious, who are you guys like? Who's the Grail on the list? Is there a strategy against who you're talking to, or are you just talking to anybody? And obviously this is we're leaning contemporary. Have you guys tried to go to anyone that you're like, hey, in a million years they would never want to have this, but there is a potential way to make it work. I'm just curious on the strategy against that.
Definitely. Yeah, this took years of us developing, because obviously, as you can see, like from not knowing anything about trad art or museums, we had to learn so much, talk to so many people, be in the same room as the people. So there's a few things. So going back to what you said about lending, it is key, like to show the value. Like there's a lot of data behind it. Like there's been over $40 million lent against Squiggles with over like 1,000 separate loans. So this just again shows its underlying value. Another like interesting fact would be like over 50% of Squiggles have never sold, and since January 1st of 2023, almost 90% of Squiggles have not traded. So there's a lot of like interesting facts where you really do see this long-term mentality. You see all the largest holders. Sometimes people might criticize like, why is the concentration a certain way? We actually look at it as a positive thing because we have it in people's hands that are just willing to hold. Like you see the top holders, they never sell because they truly, truly believe in this long-term.
Right.
It's not a quick flip. If it was, they would have sold, at the peak of 21 or 22. So yeah, that was just like on the lending side, which it does show the value, and it is very interesting. Now on the museums, our strategy is this. Obviously, the grails would be like the MoMAs, the Tates, like that, the top tier, right? We do a lot of internally. We have a lot of data, and we track a lot of these things. So we develop a list of target museums. We contact a lot of them ourselves. A lot of them we have contractors, meaning people that have connections directly to their curation boards. Because at the end of the day, this is a game of connections, and if we don't have them, we have to find the person that has that connection. So that's worked well so far. We've worked with a few, and we internally are. I can't say much about this, but for example, we got invited to a private event in LA at the beginning of this year of one, you could say, arguably one of the biggest museums in the entire world. And that was huge because it was us and every other person in their curation committee. So the fact that we were in the same room talking to them, networking, and hopefully eventually even getting to have a seat at the table, that's huge. So that's how kind of where we're looking at. We have an internal list. We're not we're open to talking to any museum because we're not at the point where we could be cherry picking. Like at this point, we got to be open, try to get it everywhere, especially worldwide. We don't want to have the collection in just U.S. museums, European. We want to be all around. So that's another thing we've been targeting, is making sure like next in Amsterdam, or I see as in Miami, and in Austria. So there's so many different ones. But yeah, that's kind of the strategy. Is right now we can't be picky, right? We want to talk to everyone, educate as many museums, but we do have our target list. And like I guess I could say this is, we're also curating like full sets of beautiful squiggles from some of the largest holders, so we can offer this to museums. So we're also like curating packages, etc. So we're just working at it from multiple angles. And yeah, it's a long-term play. Like this is a multi-year play.
And I think it's a decade play, right? And
yeah,
obviously you guys raise capital. No investor wants to hear, it's going to take years and years, but it is. You are literally going into one of the most, I would say, stubborn industries. The most like, this is how it's been done, so it's going to stay that way. It's interesting, but you can start to see the ground move, especially when you have some of these large name museums coming on. I'm curious, does the impact of like Sotheby's and Christie's coming into the digital asset game, NFTs, as well as obviously holding squiggles, I think at a higher level of, when squiggles come to auction, they definitely hold them in high regard. Does that help you guys?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything. This is something I disagree with a lot of people. I think everything helps. We're not in any position to be, oh no, this is not. Everything helps. Like being Christie, Sotheby's, Phillips, like this adds provenance. It adds importance. It puts it in other collectors' eyes that would have never even known what a squiggle is. But now because it's in Christie's or Sotheby's, it's like, what is this? Let me look more into it. So right now, this is my biggest argument with a lot of people. It's like, oh, but the Tradar will collect whatever. If we don't get out of Web3, this will never work. And so our main initiative, starting obviously this year and next year, is completely pushing out of Web3 and getting those new collectors in different industries to learn about the squiggle. And that includes galleries, museums, etc. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. When I say multi-year, I mean like starting to talk to a museum to getting it into the museum. It's a multi-year, but our DAO thesis is generation. Like we are looking at multiple decades, and we talk to our investors about this. They're fully supportive. They love this long-term view. So yeah, we're just sticking to it.
Incredible. So I assume the MoMA would be the like holy grail one on the list. I mean, obviously you made references to would be, but I feel like if the MoMA were to all of a sudden acquire a squiggle and display it, that sends a message to everyone else like, hey, like if you don't have one, you're behind, you're late. And I think it also signals something to our industry as well of, okay, we have not seen like an adoption or a signal like this against any other collection or any other artist. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. And the efforts show, like squiggles are the most collected NFT collection in the entire world by museums. We're in 8, and then if you're talking about like the ones that started all like CryptoPunks, AutoGoods, and Squiggles, AutoGoods are in 2 museums, Punks are in 4, and Squiggles are in 8. And this isn't a competition, to be super clear. This is more just like we want everyone to go in, but this is we cannot hide the fact as a DAO we're very proud of what we've done, which the natural market, meaning Snowfront and just like a museum in Germany minted squiggles, that's 4. and the DAO was the one that got the other 4. So again, it's just to show that we are doing something. We are tangibly impacting the collection, not just sitting there creating nice merch.
Right. On that kind of like thesis of like, all right, here's what the other big collections are doing. One dynamic that's interesting is around the floor price. And again, that's not, I don't think that defines everything. But notably, we saw Squills run up to like a 15 ETH floor at one point. They're currently sitting at like 4.5, 4.25 ETH floor. Not to like put you in like, it's such a dumb question, like where do you see the price going? But we've seen people theorize like, okay, when we move away from this like PFP as identity to, okay, what digital art am I representing and putting up as that becomes more of a norm? Because right now it's very normal to have a PFP. And I think that has helped punks resonate with so many people. But when it starts to become okay, every house has a screen, or when new, luxury $1 million houses are being built, they are planning out where outlets going so their screens are going to be put. And that, if anybody's listening and being like, that's not going to happen, I know multiple families right now who have asked me to consult on like what pieces to acquire, because they want to know like, okay, what size screen are we going to need? What ratio screen are we going to need? And then what piece is going to go there? And Squiggles is obviously one that I talk about, and I think it was one that resonates with people. But as it becomes normal, that drives more demand. You have the museums coming. Is it possible to see Squiggles become one of the most desired pieces to own, and thus like make this move towards a very, very high floor price?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's one, obviously that signal of trad art collecting being, the collection that's most collected by trad art. But two, I think it's culturally important. You have the ones that started it all culturally, technically, obviously CryptoPunks, Autoglyphs, and Squiggles. I'm not disregarding obviously other incredible people like Xcopy, etc. I'm just talking about like the big collections. So that's one big thing. The other one, to be honest, and I think sometimes it's overlooked, out of the top collections, Snowfro still still in this space building nonstop. Like, love Larva Labs. I mean, we know Matt, and they're great, but obviously they sold the collection, right? And then Autoglyphs is kind of like its own thing. Snowfro's still out there, and he's still pushing and still talking to museums, collectors, and nonstop. And he is basically the most liked person in the space. Like, it's really like, I don't know any person that doesn't like him, and that says a lot in a space that everyone is angry all the time. And so, yeah, I just think those are the kind of things that get a lot of attention. That's why people are incentivized to collect the Squiggle.
I am curious on the back to like the floor price side. ETH being the underlying currency here draws in an interesting dynamic. And as you just mentioned, you had a 6-figure acquisition. Now that ETH has decided to tumble, that has gone down considerably. Do you think that's like a hurdle for any ETH collector right now, is dealing with this underlying asset that currently is just getting pummeled to the ground, and people are kind of calling to like, okay, like ETH is cooked?
It could be a hurdle, but also an opportunity for those that want to get in. Suddenly, Squiggles, punks are 6, 7K, punks 70K, I think, this morning. So for those new collectors, that it's one of our main focuses of our conversations, it could be a little bit easier to say, if you bring the value, we were doing some numbers on the value of a Picasso that it's mid-single millions to 8 figures, you could build a top tier collection in the space right now. So that pitch might sound interesting to some.
It is an opportunity right now. I've seen a lot of people, they're also thinking in like ways of like taking loans or selling pieces to get more liquidity to then go make more money. But the end game has always been, okay, when I have capital to deploy, it is going back into, and it always tends to be this early generative art of Autoglyphs, Squiggles, Videnzas, punks. Like there's a core group there.
That's what we've seen happening. Also, obviously, punks, but also squiggles are going. We are tracking all sales, and most of those sales, 90% plus of those sales, are going to individual collectors to their vaults. So it's people picking not the floor, not the cheapest, picking a specific. Today, a color spread 5. Those are the most colorful normals in the collection. Color spread is the lower, the more rapid the color is going to change in the squiggle. So you want lower color spread for really colorful, and the lowest is 5, with the exceptions of hypers that is 0.5. So today, a color spread 5 sold for 10 ETH, which is more than twice the floor. So that's a collector targeting a specific piece. And we've seen that for the last couple months, and the floor getting thinner and thinner. So there is some hope there.
Yeah.
Do you see a gravitation to a certain, and obviously people might want the rarest thing, but do you see a gravitation to your high-end collectors and museums that is to a certain type? I mean, are they going after pipes? Are they going after bulbs? Is it? I'm curious how they approach it, and like from a curation standpoint, what goes through their mind? Because you guys talk to these museums and collectors and know them so well. I'm curious as like maybe a budding collector, what that like process looks like.
I was gonna say, and Sam, you can go, but I was gonna say that they are going not for slinkies. Slinky is the only type that is not in a museum, and we are trying to make it happen. But
It's so interesting.
Yeah. So it's funny because how we go about it is we offer a wide range of squiggles to see what fits their curation the best, and that's worked well so far. This is another thing about the DAO is we were blessed enough to one of the largest squiggle holders out there was very supportive of the DAO and happy with how the team was executing, and that I'll call it wallet, right? That wallet offered the DAO 30, 40, 50 squiggles just to place in museums. So this is humongous because you're talking about like $500,000 plus worth of squiggles for us to be placing, and it doesn't deplete our treasury. So instead of us depleting our treasury, we're getting these from this like very generous like collectors. So we're very, very happy, and we've been using that, and we have a list of squiggles that we show, and they pick. A lot of them will ask like what squiggles are collected by whom and blah, blah, blah. So we looked. There's all kinds, right? I agree. We need a pipe, and right now a slinky will be the other one, and a hyper. But again, I think it's a matter of time, and I think it will happen because the more museums get into it, the more they're like curating specifically to what they want. Like we've talked to museums, some of them wanted the end of the squiggle to be pointing up, some of them wanting it to point down, right? Like you'd be surprised like what, because of like a thesis they have or because it fits a certain theme in their collection. It's very, very interesting. So yeah, hard to tell. And then one other thing I was going to say on the floor price, we track this a ton, and something we've seen in the data is if you look at the majority of the sales that happened in the past couple of months, they're going to people's vaults. They're not being flipped, which is very telling on where the collector mentality is at. And you're talking about 50, 60 squiggles get sold per month at this during the peak bear. And that's another thing. Like we forget, we're at the worst of the worst. Like we're at the worst time for ETH and the worst time for NFTs. And at that same time, schools were the most collected by museums. People are still buying them. So it's just, to us, it makes us very bullish to see at the absolute worst time. And because we get hit, we call it like the double. We get hit with ETH and then with school prices down. So our treasury goes down by 4x or goes up by 4x. And it's very, very aggressive and very frustrating for Nifty and I. But it's just the nature of the game.
And something worth mentioning that probably because of Snowflow and that culture getting into everything he does or everything he's involved, the vibe in the community events Discord has been really positive even during the bear. So that's something that makes us really proud and really optimistic about the future, that people are still supportive, happy, and still there.
I'm curious from like the perspective of obviously you have these people that are willing to give you these squiggles to get them in places or these museums. Are there other places? Are there like companies? Are there brands? I mean, is that on the table for like people that you want to talk to, or is that like no, like we want traditional art, we want the traditional play of talking to these curation boards. But I was just like thinking here, where is if you guys were able to place a squiggle anywhere, yes, museums are great, and I think that that is very in line with what you would expect an art collection to do. But also like going to like Nike and being like Nike, like we have a squiggle that's similar to the check. We'll donate it to you. You get full licensing. It's a it's a big signal to art collectors, but it also is a signal to you and resonating to digital art. And that's maybe like a huge like that's the craziest ask. But you start to think like our museums are just the tip of an iceberg that is very vast and you could be creative with it. Are you exploring these other venues?
Yeah, funny that you say that. We haven't really talked much about it because it's still in the early innings. But yeah, so easy, like low hanging fruit was Web3 companies should all hold a small art, and if like you could call it like the Bitcoin strategic reserve, or like a generative art strategic reserve, and a lot of we can't name much, but trying to see what their interest and appetite is. There's some companies that already publicly own like a school or so. I think Ledger, right, Nifty, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
had
Ledger does. Yeah.
And there's a few others, but yeah, we want to do that. Like we're talking to, this is how crazy things are. Like we're talking to this developer of this mall in Europe where they wanted to have art display and wanted to have like the copy of a Warhol or something like that they own. And we're trying to get in there. Oh, it didn't work out, but we're trying to have a squiggle there permanently, and that would have been really cool. And yeah, we are exploring all, as I said, like the most harmful thing we could do right now to a collection is to be cherry picking and being like, oh no, this is not, we're not this standard. And like yeah, we keep seeing that. And then like yesterday, for example, I was walking by the mall and I walked through Saks Fifth Avenue, and they had an art collection, and it was like, this is Saks, like their actual art collection. And I was like, that's so weird. And then I Googled and I started looking. I was like, well, I'm gonna I'm gonna reach out and see imagine we could have a squiggle at Saks Fifth and whatever. The more eyes we get on this art, the better. The more it becomes recognizable, the more people like it, the more they want to dig in, and it's just a snowball effect.
Yeah, I think there's so many places. Like I would love to see a squiggle on the side of an F1 car, or again, I can let my mind run wild here, but it is crazy when you start to get into it. There, in a because of you guys basically being the stewards of a collection that doesn't have this like multi-decade, hey, this is how it's been done and how we expect to do it. You guys can kind of write the playbook for how to do this for a digital collection. And that is possibly, I think, the biggest thing to take away from this. And I think, people will say things about DAOs and they'll say things about, NFT collectors and whatnot, but you guys truly are in a position to change how digital art proliferation is handled, and where the edge cases are, right there. You could come out tomorrow and announce the craziest thing, and again, most people might have that initial reaction of like, this is the dumbest shit ever, but it could also, 2 years down the road, it's like, well, no, we did that and I led to this and this, and now everybody knows what a squiggle is. I think that's the most fascinating thing about Squiggle DAO to me.
Thank you. No, we appreciate that. And we're going to be honest with you. It's been an uphill battle with everything we've done. People are against it. They think it's a stupid, like the sculpture, it was a stupid idea. The music, after not seeing anything for a year for museums, stupid. Like we get a lot of heat from from every side, either community or it could be like an investor or whatever. But at the end of the day, what we've learned is that we have to stick to our road plan, not get distracted. And as long as we're like laser focused, everything else is noise. And so far it's worked, right? Knock on wood, it keeps everything well. But yeah, it's been because as you said, the roadmap for for DAO doesn't exist. So we're kind of writing it as we go. There is no road, and we're just flying blind. So a lot of the things like tinkering and testing, but it has been hard. Like obviously everything sounds good, but we've Nifty and I have gone through a lot of ups and downs very violently.
It's 100% not easy. Now it might sound like the museums are like an email and it happens, but not easy. Two, that's why we think that being responsible with finances and survive is key. And I many ideas that I wanted to say about all the battles and the long conversations and the sweat and tears that have happened behind the scenes to put these results. So fingers crossed we keep going.
Well, you guys obviously are bought into the mission of this, because I know I personally know, and I can understand and have empathy to how hard the journey has been. And I as a holder, I'm grateful to it. It is amazing to know that, you know, not only is Eric out there doing everything he can to talk about this and make it a known collection, but there is, I mean, you guys are out there actually at a incredible pace, I would say, too. And again, many people might disagree with that, but the pace you are moving at this is quite astounding, and I'm just happy to know you guys are doing this. I'm curious, you know, going forward here, if people want to join, how do they join? What should we expect in the coming months? Obviously you have a big announcement coming here. Yeah, I think that's kind of the direction. I think a lot of people who are listening to this are probably asking now is, okay, how do I get involved and what's next?
They can come to follow us on Twitter. They can come to the Discord. We are always there to help any new collector. We've onboarded or helped many people, like one by one, to pick their squiggle and to pick the best price for what they are trying to collect or the particular piece. So we are happy to help anyone interested in squiggles or geek about the squiggles. And as you've probably noticed, we love to geek about the metadata, the rarities, the traits, all that. So happy, and always, as we mentioned before, the vibe is really positive. So it's not one of those discourse that you are going to see people fighting and complaining. So it's always welcoming.
Good vibes.
And then on top of that, the things to expect, we're going to come out with the Squiggle Foundation. This is nothing new in the sense it's more of a branding thing. The Squiggle DAO is still going to be the same, but we created a new website, a new Twitter, because something we encounter a lot is when you're a brand new person to Squiggles, you go into the Squiggle DAO website, it is very confusing because you have traits, tooling, you have the Squiggle, what's a DAO, right? So it's just too much. So we created a website specifically for Squiggles. So then when you come in, like I tested it like this. I literally give it to my mom or dad and be like, let me know what you think, like what you understand from this. And hopefully that's how it shows. And yeah, we're going to come out with that soon, which should help new onboarding, museum and education, anyone in general. So that's a big one. The museum, yes, hopefully more museums come. As we said, it could be like 6 months of nothing. Like things piled up early this year, and then it could be like 6 months of nothing, and then everyone's going to be like, what are you doing? But it's just as it goes. And lastly, we're going to come up with some new data and analytics. We're revamping some of this. We think it's important to have as many data points as possible when trying to either acquire a piece or understand where the collection's at. So we're bringing in, I would just say a lot more data and analytics, which will be rolled out throughout the year.
Something worth mentioning, the DAO is open to everyone. There is a small private section for Squiggle holders, and there is a tiny bit private section for DAO members, which are the holders of the NFT or the Squiggle DAO membership. It's an NFT that anyone can buy on OpenSea. So you will have access, but if you want to get more access, Squiggle holder, and full access is the DAO membership token.
Amazing. Well, I can't emphasize enough to our listeners that if you are a Squiggle owner, go please check out what they're doing. If you check out their Twitter currently, you can go sign up for their monthly newsletter, Twitter, Instagram. They have so many things that they have going on, and there's obviously announcements that come out, so you don't want to miss those. Guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I love the movement that you're doing. I consider you guys some of the best in the space. But just thank you. And I'm excited to see what you guys come out with next.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Of
thank you
course.
so much for the kind words and great being here.
Amazing. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you on the next one. And be sure to make sure you are following Squiggle DAO. Cheers, guys.